Hi everyone, my name is Mary-Rosalyn and I'm going to be talking to you about Google Street View today. We're going to talk about some of the features of Google Street View and how to use it, and then we'll talk about how to integrate it into some of our lesson plans in our classrooms. So this is Google Street View. If you go straight to Street View, as you can see, it opens up on the gallery, but we have lots of options up here to choose from. So the gallery is where you will find the most popular destinations. If we scroll down, you can see there's events like the Asian Games and the International Balloon Festival, and there's also locations, Lebanon, National Territory Parks, Nigeria, Disney, all these things that could be quite useful in your classroom. The one problem with the gallery view is that there's no way to search for a particular location. So say if you're looking for Mount Rushmore, there's no way to actually search for that location. So you just sort of have to use this as a discovery tool. This button on the far right will change the view. You can put it in a grid, or you can get just the names and have no sneak peek of what it looks like if you find that easier to work with. So you can choose whichever one you would like. The next thing is the Apps tab, which we click on right there. Apps is where you can download the Android or the iOS app. Unfortunately, you can't download it on a computer, so if you're working with MacBooks or Chromebooks with your students, you can't necessarily download it. But if you have a class set of iPads or phones, this app tab would be good to download it onto those devices. Next we have Understand. So this one's really cool. It shows you where all Street View is located. So all of these blue spaces that you see are where there are Google Street Views. And you can drag this little man down and he will show you different locations. So I've stumbled upon a mountain range here. So if you're doing something specific, you can look and see how it looks before you assign it to your students. So if I click this back button. So if you're doing a unit on Spain, you can, take your little guy down to Spain and look around at the topography and see what they have to offer before you decide on what to do with your kids. You can also use these zoom buttons to go closer. If you want something more specific, you can look at the specific cities and again drag your man to whichever cities you're focusing on for that lesson. If you scroll down a little bit further, it'll tell you where all they're filming next. So in this fall, here are all the places they're going to be going. So if you don't see something that you need, you can see if it's coming, and you can use this search bar to search all of the different countries. So that's Understand. The next thing is Publish. This is where you can actually use some of this equipment or whatever equipment you have to publish your own Street Views. So if you have something specific that you want your kids to have in your hometown or wherever you are, somewhere that you've been, you can actually come up here and use this publishing policy to go over how to publish your own things, and then you can use some of these kits. You can rent them if you need more technology before you do that on your own. So that's a really cool option. Hire and Earn and Privacy are not so useful for us. That's just if someone has requested a Street View or they need people to do their Street Views. So not so helpful for the classroom. Excuse me. So the next thing is how to navigate. So since the gallery is not very useful in searching for specific things, you can actually do this much better if you start with Google Maps. So I'm going to switch over to Google Maps. This is something that you should be familiar with. It's on everybody's phones, but this is how it looks on the computer. We have a search bar up here. That'll be very helpful, and then your same controls over here that will let you zoom in and zoom out, and the same little man. So once you pick the man up, you can see we have some things down here. If it's a yellow circle, that means you can see inside the building. That's going to be really helpful for museums or important buildings like the Taj Mahal, where you can actually get a view of inside the building. If it's just a blue square, or circle, excuse me, you can drop your man on that circle and that'll give you the street view from where that circle is. So as you can see, we can take our mouse and click and drag to move ourselves around and get a whole 360 view of this fire command center that we have found. And you can look out on the street, into the harbor, and see all of that. Once you're done, you can either click this button to zoom out and go to a more upper level, or you can simply go back if you're done altogether. The last thing are these blue lines, and that is where Street View actually gets its name. It's actually the view from the street. So these are the streets that have views. So if you just put yourself on the street or in an intersection, that is where you will be. There's these useful lines down here that will show you the direction that the traffic moves, and the street names are also clearly posted. If you'll see, my mouse moves this little arrow. If you see any X's on the floor, if you click an X, it'll actually move you forward to that X. So here's another X, click that, and it'll actually move me down the street. So that's pretty cool. So, as far as lesson planning, this tool is really useful for lots of different things. You can use it to take a virtual field trip or do a scavenger hunt in some sort of museum or park. You can explore settings in books that might be unfamiliar to students. If you're reading about a book in an African setting, you can actually take your students to Africa this way and let them see what it's like there and how it differs from where they live. Younger students can use the traditional street view. If we take our little man to the street view again, younger students can help, this can help them give and receive directions. So if you put them in partners and let one give directions, maybe from school to their house or from a simple destination to somewhere close by that they would be familiar with, you can tell them to take each other through the scene. So, they can say, keep going straight, and then take a right, take a left. That can work on lots of different directional senses as well. So let me take you on an example of a virtual field trip. So you can type in any location you want. So let's take the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. So a dream field trip would be able to take all of our students to the Smithsonian because there's so much to see and do and explore, but seeing as how most of us do not live in Washington, D.C., that would be extremely hard. So once we get our location, we can see some information over here, more for people who are going to visit, but it's also nice to have, the address and some basic information. So then if we take our man, we can see that there is all these blue lines inside the building, which means that there's actually street views inside. So if we start at the one end of the building, it'll actually take us inside and show us all of the exhibits that they have. So this is of 757 over here, and if we want to get closer, we can just find an X and get ourselves much closer and look around. Again, I'm just clicking the screen and dragging it around to get a 360-degree view. You can even see a lot of the words. Some of the smaller words are harder, so you might want to use this with some sort of supplemental PowerPoint. You might want to take notes one day and then on the location that you're visiting, and then the next day you can visit that location so that they already sort of have background information before they explore. As you can see, there's so much you can do in here. It's so clear. You can see everything. The space suits for the military. Another really cool thing that you can do with this once you're on this virtual field trip, so that you can let your students explore and you don't really have to be sitting right there holding their hands and telling them where to go and what to see, is you could create sort of a scavenger hunt where they could take screenshots with their screens of different things that they see. So you could say, find an airplane from the 1950s for older students. For younger students, that might be something as simple as screenshot something red, screenshot something green, screenshot something that's bigger than a person or smaller than a person. So all of those things would be great ways to use this and really get your kids to explore. So once you're in here, you can move around. You can continue moving forward all through the hallways. But if you want to go somewhere radically different, it might be easier to hit the back button and then drag your man to the other side of the museum instead of having to go all the way through. This is a little bit complicated to hold sometimes. It takes, 2 fingers on a Mac or a Chromebook. If you have a mouse, it might be a little bit easier to click and actually drag physically for younger students. So it might be something where you want to have an instructional day on how to use Google Street View so that your students aren't frustrated by some of the commands. Another really cool thing that is not offered on a MacBook or a Chromebook, depending on what your school has, is if you have a class set of phones or iPads, you can actually use this with VR goggles if you download the iOS app. So if we go back to Street View and to the Apps tab and scroll down, if you have this iOS or Android app, you can actually use this in cooperation with any VR equipment that you have. And the app will also let you create your own street views that you can use with either VR goggles or the traditional way as well. So that could be really cool for you to create your own assignments, or for students to have their own assignments so that they can go to their homes and pick their favorite room and do a 360 view, or they can, go in their backyard. That would be a really cool thing for different cultures, and to see everybody's show and tell that way instead of doing it this traditional way. So there's lots of ways to use Google Street View in your classrooms. I hope that you found this informational and that you'll be able to implement this in your classroom. I think it's a really nice tool to let your kids explore the world around them. So thank you.